This is Jed Disler, and welcome to the Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. The Gramophone Collection is a series of repertoire surveys on disc that Gramophone magazine publishes on a regular basis. And in this series, a critic discusses various recorded versions of a particular work. And the critic has to come up with usually 4 choices, one of which will be the top choice. Now, naturally, a writer cannot take each and every recorded version of a popular work into account. For instance, we were talking about Bach's Goldberg variations a few episodes back, and there are more than 700 recordings of that work, and I'm talking only about piano versions, forget about harpsichord versions. I mean, it seems like every pianist on earth wants to record the Goldbergs. At least more than 700, maybe even more, have been published commercially of that piece. So how on earth can one human being go through all of them, let alone listen to all of them? Well, maybe there is a human being somewhere that's that compulsive, but I've heard maybe 2/3 of them, for the record. So that's the pot calling the kettle black, right? So usually for the Gramophone Collection, we have to pare it down to about 20 recordings. The first of these Gramophone Collection surveys that I happen to have written was published back in 2007, and the featured work was the Piano Sonata No. 3 in F minor, Opus 5, by Johannes Brahms. This is a composition that happens to have been quite well served on disc, starting way back in the 78 RPM era with wonderful performances by Percy Grainger and Harold Bauer, and continuing up through the stereo and digital eras. And there's a general consensus about what the reference versions of the Brahms F minor sonata are, at least in stereo. I'm thinking of the Arthur Rubinstein 1959 recording. The Clifford Curzon recording has always been reference-worthy. Claudio Arrau and Julius Katchen also, I think, is considered to be a reference. He recorded it twice, in mono and then in stereo. I know a lot of piano mavens who swear by Rado Lupu, and I was actually fortunate enough to hear Rado Lupu play this sonata live in concert. I'm also very happy to have the Brahms F minor recordings of Emanuel Ax, Marie Pariah, and Earl Wild in my collection. But before I discuss one recording in particular that I find very special, yet may be way off everyone else's radar, let's quickly talk about what this sonata entails. First of all, Brahms was about 20 years old when he first visited Robert and Clara Schumann in 1853, and this is when he played sections of the sonata in progress for both of them. The Schumanns were totally enthusiastic about this music, and they embraced the young composer right away. So Brahms was quite inspired by their encouragement, and he went off to finish the F minor sonata at white heat very quickly, and he came up with a work that still stands out for its imposing scope, its unusual structural design for the time, and its unbridled passion. It remained Brahms' largest work for piano solo. It's in an arch form of 5 movements, which, as I said, was not typical of the time. And in fact, in terms of form, it remained rather unique for decades. It opens with a very heroic allegro maestoso movement that really feels orchestral in its size and scope. It's big in every way. Then we have the andante espressivo, which is both luminous and intense. Then a third movement scherzo brings the listener down to earth, more or less, with both swagger and lightness of texture at times. There's a brief intermezzo that's really kind of dark and mysterious. I love this movement. And it helps set the stage for a finale that starts out in a quiet, almost teasing manner, but then the music gives way to thunderous eruptions and torrential passage work. When I was working on my gramophone survey of the Brahms F minor sonata on record, I remember I'd listened to maybe around 60 or so recorded versions, and I listened to them blind without knowing who was playing. At least I didn't look at my computer screen, and if I was playing a physical CD, I made sure that I didn't have the cover in front of me, or I put the disc into my player with my eyes closed. And then as I listened, I took extensive notes. Then I winnowed my list down to about 20 contenders. But then I found that I kept circling back to this one particular recording, and after several hearings, I just had a look to see who was playing. And this recording turned out to be by the Canadian pianist Andre Laplante, released on the Canadian Analecta label. And the physical disc is probably difficult to source, but you can easily find this release on streaming platforms and via digital download. So what makes Andre Laplante's Brahms Third Sonata so special? Well, like Claudio Arrau, he orchestrates his sonority from the bottom up, yet he avoids the older pianists' rugged grandeur, if you have to call it something like that, in favor of the kind of prismatic transparency that one associates with pianists like Sviatoslav Richter, even though Richter did not record this particular piece. And also, Andre Laplante's variety of articulation adds inner drama to passages that often seem rambling, such as, like the soft chords accompanied by the staccato D flats in the finale. I think that's something that I wish I had a sound sample of, but it was an example that I wrote about, and so I'm just stealing from my review here. And also, Andre Laplante is especially attentive to Brahms' accents and his dynamic markings. And he probably doesn't sweep you away with the impetuosity of Arthur Rubinstein in the stereo remake, or either of the two Julius Katchen recordings, or even the 86-year-old Earl Wild, who was on amazing form in his recording. There's also this mind-blowing live 1961 BBC Legends recording with Annie Fisher. That's an amazing Brahms F minor. But Andre Laplante offers what I wrote to be, and I quote from my gramophone article, an unusually worked out, personalized, deeply felt, yet totally unindulgent and beautifully engineered performance that deserves serious attention. And it's coupled with equally excellent performances of the Brahms Rhapsodies, Opus 79. This is Jed Disler, and thank you for listening to the Piano Maven podcast. Please tell all of your piano-loving friends about this podcast, and I look forward to being with you next time.